All right, hello and welcome to the Off by One Security stream. Sorry for getting started a minute late there. I went to go start the stream, and apparently, because I changed the time from 11 a.m. Pacific to 10 a.m. Pacific, LinkedIn got upset, and YouTube and Twitter and other destinations are all cool with the stream if you change times, but apparently LinkedIn is not. So I had to completely delete LinkedIn from the stream. So it is not streaming to that location right now. All right, cool story. I know enough on that. So again, welcome to the Off by One Security stream. My guest this week is Jeroen Vandeleur. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but I try. How do you pronounce your last name?
Vandeleur, but it's very Dutch. So
Vandeleur. Okay, all right.
yeah, my parents never. I know my last name; they cannot choose it, but my parents never believed in an international career. So that's pretty why it sounds like really Dutch. So it is
Yeah.
a Dutch name. So
Sweet. Cool. So yeah, this week's stream, I wanted to when I first got started with this stream back in September, so it's only been a few months now. The intent was to have a lot of advanced content, but also things that other people really aren't streaming so much about. Because as I've said before, if you type in buffer overflows, you get a million videos about that topic, which is great. There's a bunch of different perspectives out there, but I wanted to kind of bring something different out here on the platform. So that includes different topics like I've had so far on red teaming or looking at malware or blockchain and smart contract security, like all these different topic areas. And this week, I brought on Jeroen to talk about automation. I'll tell you a little bit about why before we get started here. So Jeroen wrote a class for the SANS Institute on automation for offense, for defense, for on-prem, for cloud. And I realized, so the alpha version of the course just ran like literally last week. And I took it, I sat the course, and it quickly made me realize how much I don't know about this topic area. And when talking to people, I'm finding that that's pretty common amongst people, especially in the offensive space, haven't done much with regard to like terraforming and just all the technology for deployment in the cloud and again, automation and what you can do with it. And I remember talking, Jeroen works at Inviso out of Belgium. And I remember talking to Eric Van Buggenhout, also at Inviso in Belgium. He's one of the partners there. And when COVID hit, he told me that a lot of their customers have been asking for help with automation for various activities and kind of what can be done there. And I don't know, like, I'm sure part of the reason as to why it's an interesting topic is because you could potentially make the jobs, I guess, free up some time, I should say, for people who have a lot of things to do already. The more that you can automate, we all know that, the more time we can focus on more important tasks. Same thing with like, let's talk about fuzzing, for example. If you're going to fuzz an application as opposed to statically analyzing it, that's obviously going to free up some time, allow that thing to go at it while you go and work on other stuff. So automation is huge for defenders, for offensive folks, for everybody in between. So that's kind of like why I wanted to have this stream. Again, I realize how much I don't know, and in talking to other people, how much a lot of people don't seem to know about this space. And when I sat that course, it blew me away as far as, again, I really am just on the very, very beginning of that area. And when you look at things like Chat GPT, for example, and all this other technology out there, it's kind of like you got to get on board with this stuff or you're going to get left behind. So that is why I wanted to have Jeroen on. So I've already mentioned a couple things about Jeroen. He works at Inviso. He's written a course for SANS. This is his first course. It's also his first time teaching the course. He did a fantastic job. And so very excited to have him on. And I guess let Jeroen tell you a little bit more about himself.
okay, perfect. Now, yeah. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on your stream. I really had a lot of things I learned during the previous talks. Like, I'm not a malware engineer, I'm not an exploit writer. I'm more, my background is actually, I was a firewall engineer. And then from a firewall engineer, I started to evolve more into the offensive world. So taking a look at application security, web application, but that was back in the beginning of those days. And then overall, I took a little bit more interest in the defensive side, in that sense, like incident response and how to handle and how to detect certain incidents. And of course, combining all that together, I became quickly like an a senior architect that needed to fit in all those pieces together and to say, okay, how can we prevent, detect, and respond on certain attack scenarios? And thank you very much already, Steve, for that very nice introduction. Based on that, I really took the opportunity when we started with automation. So we are also using it internally, of course. But based on that, I'm also how do you say it, a heavy sporter, so I like to go to the gym, so I needed to automate some of my work, otherwise I couldn't. I needed to skip some gym sessions, so therefore I started to investigate in automation, which is not completely true, of course, but therefore I started with automation. And it was an interesting project, like writing the course on automation, because a lot is out there related to automation, a lot really linked towards IT operations, but not really linked towards cybersecurity. And that's where it really became interesting. Like, okay, but how can we, for example, use, you already mentioned it, tools like Terraform, Ansible. You have other automation tools like Chaos Monkey, which are then really linked towards cybersecurity. But how can we make like those tools, like Chef, Puppet, how can we use those tools also from a security perspective? Because typically we see that IT operations is working with them and security is not really aware. So they do get more recommendations and they give recommendations towards IT operations. But based on that, we can create certain templates from a defensive perspective where security is already built in by design. And that's an important factor I wanted to support also within automation. And of course, from the offensive side, also, we saw that if you need to do those manual actions every time, that probably there would be some beneficial, or you would have some benefit from automating certain things. And it became a very interesting journey. I learned a lot during that journey. And we also, from a defensive perspective, so we see that a lot of automation is used within defense. So really incident response. There it became really like a very efficient process on how we can use automation to, for example, reduce alert fatigue and see how we can actually optimize those alerts. So I think it was a very interesting one. It was a very interesting one, that one, and it keeps on evolving, and I'm learning every day about automation. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm very new to the whole thing. So like, I think about, for, let's say, when you're running a course, like teaching a class, and in the old days, which I guess was pre-COVID, we used to, if I was teaching a class, I would bring a bunch of computers in the front of the classroom and we'd hardwire the network or use wireless. But then the students would then attack from their computers, the computers and virtual machines in the front of the room. So it was all physically wired together. Then obviously when COVID hit, everything had to go into the cloud. And luckily we had already been doing a lot of online training. And so we had to ramp that up quickly. But the idea was like, okay, if I want to run a class and we want people from Singapore or Sydney, Australia, or New York or London, all to be able to take it, how can we, if someone signs up and they want to start doing the labs, how can we automatically deploy that range environment? And then also be very cognizant of resource costs, where if someone starts up a range, because there's different ways that we can do it. And like, I've looked at some of different training providers out there, and the way they do it is relying on snapshots with these really small implementations, which it just it looks easy. It looks like, hey, I can just jump right in on this, but there's a lot of problems that come along with that, and it's not scalable, and you can't do much larger range environments that way. So by using Terraform and such to like deploy these ranges, it takes a while for them to spin up, but then they're able to have like this huge, 30, 40 system environment where they're all up and running just for that one person. And then we can do like dynamic provisioning where you can like pause it or shut it all down again to reduce the cost. So like when I think of using the tech, like that's one example. But like when taking your course, especially I want to focus more on the offensive side, we could potentially do things like automated like red teaming. So I guess tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point there. So indeed, from a red teaming perspective, imagine that you can deploy an infrastructure in a matter of minutes and then actually destroy it and turn it on in another environment. They're also destroyed, so you can really hop around. And you can really have like a standardized infrastructure with command and controls. With actually a good example, and it's maybe something I can show you already. It's already a project that is been there for a while. But let me quickly grab the link there. So it's called Red Baron. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it is like with the principle of configuration management tool. So it's this one. So it's a GitHub project. It is with the nice pictures there, but okay. So it is really like with Ansible modules to create some form of a red team infrastructure. Now there are a lot of projects nowadays going on, but this is like really okay how to do the HTTP command and control in AWS, Azure. So those are Terraform scripts. So you have all those environments, all those templates here available, which I don't think they are really managing it at the moment because, yeah, you see the last updates 5 years ago there. But there are a lot of interesting resources. And one I really wanted to show is actually the Purple Cloud. Purple Cloud. This is my own GitHub. Sorry, GitHub.
From Jason Ostrom?
Yes, indeed. From the I Know Jason.
Yeah, it's funny. First time I got introduced to Jason was VoIP Hopper, that old tool that you could like hop onto a voice VLAN. This is hysterical. It's like,
yeah. But to be honest, there also the amount of effort he took to create. So I will show you maybe later on the demo.
yeah.
But the amount of effort he took for actually creating this one, it's amazing. So you have like Python libraries, so Python code where you can actually then like specific details like, okay, how many users do I want to have in my domain? What kind of attack simulations do I want to run there? Do I want to install Velociraptor? How many endpoints? So you can actually define all those things within parameters, and the Python script will generate you your Terraform code, and then you can actually deploy it in a matter of. I did it, I think, yesterday for testing some issues or some monitoring detection mechanisms, and there it was really a matter of minutes, and that entire environment was running there. So it's pretty cool to see what they are doing. So the generators here, for example, that are the Python scripts. So you have like an Active Directory, you have Federation services, also a link with Azure Active Directory, Managed Identity, a phishing app. You have a SIEM called Sentinel. That's the Azure Sentinel. So that's the SIEM, the cloud native SIEM there. And you have some storage. So really like buckets that are on there. So meaning there also, if you see all those generators, you can actually take it and just run your own AD environment with your parameters. Let's maybe give it a try and let's see how it works.
Now, is Purple Cloud is that for like training and practicing, or is there more like a production use case for it?
This is really for training and practicing. So what I typically do is when I, for example, have a new APT or I'm really looking for investigating like a new attack type or an attack technique, then typically I run this for a couple of hours or maybe half an hour. But I run this because there are so many, there are already like a lot of components in it. And then from testing purposes, I want to see, okay, what can it detect? For example, by default, there's Velociraptor in it. I don't know if you know that program, but it's an open source like EDR tool. But you can also use like, for example, commercial toolings like CrowdStrike or Windows Defender for Endpoint. It doesn't matter, but you can deploy those things immediately with Terraform. And also there, you can run Ansible on top of it to really give it like your own customized configuration. So in that perspective, you don't need to open up your local machine anymore and install all those VMs or taking snapshots. Now you have just like a Terraform template that you can deploy in AWS, in Azure. It depends, of course, of what's your favorite environment or what you are used to. And then you can easily deploy it and you can try starting to test like certain malwares or certain attack techniques to see like, okay, how is it working now in a domain environment? So So that's pretty neat to see. And yeah, with those generators, it's pretty easy to already generate a TF file, so which is like a Terraform file. And you also have, yeah, that's maybe also good to know. So here it's limited at this moment, but you can create your own, of course. You have like those attack scripts where it's, in this case, it's going to try and create an application, and then it's going to try enumerate access. So here it's going to do reconnaissance in phase 1. And then in phase 2, it's really going to attack and try to have like higher privileges to create a certain object. So pretty nice to see, and actually very straightforward to implement. I don't know if a lot of the cybersecurity professionals at this moment already are working with Terraform or Ansible, but it's from this perspective, it's really nice to see that you can just deploy your entire range in a matter of minutes. And that's how you already explained it there. Also for student ranges, it's the ideal scenario to have like, okay, this is a firing range, for example, and I want to test certain things. So you have definitely, there are a lot of advantages also to working with those configuration management or infrastructure as code tooling. And Terraform is, yeah, one of the more well-known ones.
Do you see this as a good tool for people who are new to automation and Terraform and such, to kind of gently get into it and learn how to use that? Or is this more of something that's pre-packaged and you can use it for, you know, what it does, but not necessarily to kind of learn how to start with automation?
For me, this is actually the ideal tool to start with automation. Why? Because the first thing you want to do is, okay, how can I automatically interact with virtualized environments? And for example, during the first day of the class, I made a mistake to run some virtual machines on a laptop, which was not that powerful. And I could, thanks to actually deploying or configuring everything, configuring or creating those Terraform script, it was a matter of minutes, and I could deploy it towards a cloud environment or towards another machine with more resources. So from that perspective, it's really like a very nice tool to start with automation. And there's a lot of documentation available. And as you can see, you have a lot of templates that you can just reuse and that you really can have a look at.
Cool. So what do you want to show us today as far as demonstrations? Because the folks love demonstrations.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I have some demonstrations related to Terraform. I have also a demonstration related to how you can change certain attack techniques together with Atomic Red Team, which you can also, for example, use in your Terraform script and Ansible on top of it. You can configure like for continuous adversary emulation. What's typically a challenge we have with clients is that they are stating like, okay, but you cannot do this on the real production environment or on real production systems. So now our new approach is really like, okay, look, we have like a template, an infrastructure template. Can we deploy, for example, 4 images with Atomic Red Team or an adversary emulation tool on it? And let's run it there in your environment to see how it can detect. So imagine typically how a network is constructed. You have several mitigation layers, you have security controls in between. You want to test the detection capabilities of your proxy or your firewall to see how it will react, for example, to some malicious attack paths. Then Terraform is ideally in combination with a tool like Atomic Red Team. Ideally, you can combine them, and then you can actually deploy those configurations, deploy those virtualized systems, run those attacks, and see if the border or the mitigation layer is actually able to detect those things. And you can then do it once in your internal zone, in your demilitarized zone, so your DMZ, or in a more secured zone, to just test all those environments. Because typically we get the feedback like, okay, you can test those things, but not on our production systems. And with Terraform, for example, also, and Ansible even, you can use their images and just deploy and easily install like new systems. So from a continuous adversary emulation ID, it's really ideal to use those tools because it's easy to deploy and it's really like a matter of of minutes, depending, of course, on your configuration there.
Yeah.
So maybe I can have a small. So I have this is the number of my cores there. Of course, I need to have the right passwords. So I actually downloaded the Purple Cloud, so which is just like a GitHub product. You can just download it, install Terraform. You have a certain library that you need to install via pip faker. And with that module installed, you can actually run, for example, you see the ad.py file, which is like the generator. So the root directory of the Purple Cloud is this one. You have your attack scripts, you have your docs, you have your generators. So typically before when you want to create your Terraform file, so really like infrastructure as code as it's being defined, if you want to define your infrastructure as code templates, you can just go to the generators, and there within those generators you have, like, for example, how I can configure an Azure AD, how I can configure an Active Directory, how I can configure Sentinel. So maybe let's have a look at the AD one. So there you have like a Python script which is called ad.py, and you have ad.py. You have like the parameter, of course, minus help. Oh, Python 3. So you have like a help file. You have like some options that you can define here, like, for example, the number of endpoints you want to have in your environment, which is of course a great thing, because imagine you need to deploy every endpoint side by side manually. That's just clicking through an interface. So typically with Terraform, and especially with these Python scripts, you can then make it a very flexible environment and start automating those stuff. So from that perspective, you can you have your AD domain. You can also add, and that's also a nice one, you can also add how many users you want within your AD being populated. You have your admin password and you have your username, and then also you can define if you want your endpoints to be domain joined or not. So related to that, it's just like very simple as it's being explained there. But for example, I will copy and paste this one. So what will this code do? Is it actually readable on my screen? Is it
I think maybe increase the font a little bit would be helpful for people.
Perfect. Where is it? There.
Control-Shift+ should just work probably in there.
Oh yeah. Is it a custom? Is it not? Come on. My VM is not working with me.
Does Control-Shift+ not increase it?
At the moment, not. No, it's just scrolling down. So I think there's a key layout mismatch there. Let me quickly see. Can't I? No. Come on. I cannot really increase it here, so where is the option again? No, that's a new one.
Yeah, it's weird that Control-Shift+ isn't responding.
Let me once try it again. I don't know. It's just scrolling down. And this one is working. Okay.
Okay, good.
Scrolling, just a plus sign. My apologies for that, but now it's maybe a little bit more readable.
Perfect.
Well, in any case, if it's not readable, let us know via the
It
chat.
comes up every stream, so don't worry.
I saw it during the previous stream, so I was wondering if it was sufficiently, if the font was sufficiently big. So what I did here is actually with Python, we are going to spin up a domain controller. This is our domain name, so it's globexautomation.com, which is like a imaginary company. Then you have the admin, which is me, the password. Then you have your AD user. So I want to populate my Active Directory with 25 users. I want to have 2 endpoints, which are domain joined. And actually, when you run that script, it's going... now it's not working. Why is it not working? Let me quickly... that's why it's not working. So yeah, sometimes it does something with the password itself. So you need to see like this. And now, as you can see, it actually generated those Terraform scripts. So you see setting AD domain, blah, 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 the amount of users. So you see that it's spinning up those things. Not really spinning up, but creating those files. And here you also have a CSV file, which can help you. But here you have really the Terraform scripts that are being generated on the fly by the Python one. So just to give you an example, let me quickly refresh this one. So there is a purple cloud group there, but it should have no resources. So resource not found. So let me refresh this one. So as you can see, I have some resources groups which are used for demo purposes there, but there's no one related to purple cloud. So I'm logged in within my Azure. So that's, of course, also something you need to do. You, of course, need to authenticate within your environment, but then actually it's just pretty simple. You have Terraform init. What will it do, Terraform init? It will check if all those provider plugins are there. For Azure, it's Azure ERM. Here you have the random one, template, HTTP. So it just checks if all those modules, those provider modules are there, successfully initialized, which means, okay, it's okay. So we can now just say, okay, apply it towards our environment. And then it's going to check your configuration files. And it will take a couple of seconds to really read through all those configuration files. But once it has been generated, or once it has been checked, then you need to. So here you get an overview of what is being created. So that's maybe also good to see. And once it's being checked, you can just type yes. And now it's actually going to creation complete, read complete, creation complete. So now when we are looking into our Azure environment, you will see that there will be objects being deployed and provisioned thanks to this Terraform script. And we will have, normally, we already have a resource group, which is called Purple Cloud. No, it's not there yet, but it will be there in a couple of minutes. Let me check where the Terraform script is. So yeah, from a VM perspective, that's of course a little bit slower, but it's not taking that much of time there. So let me quickly. Oh, it's still not there. Where are the resources? There are the resource groups. Yeah, it's still creating that one, apparently. But yeah, you see how easy it is actually to generate a Terraform script and or to generate an entire environment. And let's maybe check back in a couple of minutes on what it's doing there. So
I think that's part of the issue here is it doesn't seem like much interesting stuff is going on, but it's actually doing a ton of the work for you that would take hours or days to do. So it's masking what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine back in the days that when you are creating your domain controller or you are creating your test network to display or to do some adversary emulation there, it took hours before you were ready, even days sometimes, depending on how advanced you want it to be. And you can build upon this and really make it very complex if it's needed. You can reuse it over and over again. And of course, snapshots have the same principle, but that's again copying snapshots. It's a lot of data, and this is really like code, and it can be very flexible. Why? because you will see also when the script is done, you have output format like, okay, I created this user with this username, those are the IP addresses, those are, so all that is done all that is done dynamically and automated. So which makes a lot of sense if you want to start with automation and you want to, for example, test certain attack paths. You want to have like a realistic environment, and based on that, you can definitely use Terraform there.
Yeah, I remember when if you've ever set up an Exchange server, you know how painful that can be and how slow it is. And that building out a custom AMI to be able to deal with Exchange took like a couple weeks to figure it out. But now that once it's built, like we can deploy an Exchange server in any course with ease.
Yeah, no, definitely. Once you have the same baseline configuration, then you can definitely deploy those things. But also from a business perspective there. So if you have an organization and you want to deploy new web applications in cloud environments, from a security perspective or from a security architect perspective, you can actually build now your templates where you immediately say, okay, look, you cannot have, like, you need to have a web application firewall in front of your web application, or these rules need to be presented or by default configured before you can deploy those things. And Terraform is also going to monitor those states, so you can really see then what are the differences between your initial good state or the state you configured and you provisioned, and actually the state that is going on. So which we typically call like a configuration drift. Those are the things, you can, with thanks to automation, you can now monitor more closely.
Yeah, for sure. So once this is done, what are you going to show us?
So I have, for example, I don't know, probably a lot of you know it. You have like Atomic Red Team. You ever played around with that, Steve? Probably you have.
A little bit, not as much as I probably should.
Okay, so what I really like about Atomic Red Team is it's like very easy to, for example, look at a certain technique, look at a certain attack path, and really look at, okay, how are adversaries using those things and what are known techniques. Now again, it's not a silver bullet, not everything is in there, but a lot of information is already provided by them, and you can really have like a very nice look at it. On which kind of techniques are being used and how you can then stage your attack or actually mimic an adversary for certain techniques there. So what I wanted to show you is, for example, here also I have like a domain controller with PowerShell enabled, of course. Let me quickly grab a new tab. So you're all familiar probably with MITRE ATT&CK framework. So from that perspective, MITRE ATT&CK is a very good resource. It's a library of all those techniques being used by adversaries. So you have the enterprise one. You also have a cloud one. Now it's scrolling and control is working. So you have all those techniques there. And it's what you typically, when a security manager is like going to a conference or reading up on some things, like, for example, what kind of adversaries are targeting my industry, what kind of APTs, so advanced persistent threats, are really valuable or are really targeting my organization. So how well are we protected? Those are, I think, in most cases, a typical question by, for example, the CISO or security manager as such. Because based on conferences or information they found on the internet, they really want to know, okay, can we discover those techniques? Can we discover certain adversaries within our environment? And how good are we at discovering discovering a compromise? So I like to use Atomic Red Team for those things because it's based on the actual attack matrix. And you have all those things there. So, for example, command and scripting interpreter, that's a very obvious one. But you see a lot of information there on it. You see that there are certain sub-techniques on which platforms they can be used, last modified, and you can even create your own atomics. And what's great there, for example, if you are going to look for adversaries, then you can actually see which adversaries are using those techniques. So Another interesting resource, because we are talking about adversaries here, is the adversary emulation GitHub project. So let me quickly open that one up.
Yeah, I thought Caldera was really neat once that came out with the MITRE ATT&CK. It's a fun
Ah,
tool.
yeah, they have, and they also have a plugin for Atomic. So by default, it's built in there. But if you're interested in learning more, like okay, what are some of the adversary emulation plans? You of course have the Sans poster, like the purple team one, which already has like some APTs in it. But here also the adversary emulation library. There are some cool things that are in there, and they actually have a step-by-step process, like how you can simulate, for example, Carbonac. So they have emulation plans, they have attack layers, they have resources, they have even Yara rules to detect certain things. They give you a lot of information here already. But if we then look at the emulation plan, you really have like scenario one, scenario two. If you click on that scenario, you really have like, okay, step zero, start your command and control server, initial access, local discovery and collection, remote access tool, domain discovery and credential dumping. So you will see a lot of those techniques coming back with the APTs there. But as you can see, there's a lot of documentation. It is a manual process, so this is not really linked to automation there. But you can definitely, if you're interested in adversary emulation, this is something you can already take a look at and see, okay, what are they doing? What tools are they using? And how are they defining their attack path? So if I'm referring to, if I refer to your previous talks, like for example, the exploit development, it was a very interesting talk, so very nice. There also typically it's the initial intrusion to find your exploit, to actually weaponize your attack, then exploit, but there it doesn't stop. Of course, the attacker, you know the cyber kill chain, the attacker wants to do the installation, and then command and control and lateral movement, all those things are embedded in there. So with automation, we typically focus like, okay, how can we chain all those things together, that if we have our initial intrusion, how can we then pivot within the network? And that's where Atomic Red Team, for example, or Caldera can have a major impact on visibility, like, okay, how well protected are we, and what kind of adversaries can we emulate? But it's a good point that you're making there. So I have Caldera already there. So let's see in a minute on what it's doing and how you can actually use Caldera for adversary emulation. Yeah, the purple team poster. Thank you for sharing it. But it's a very nice poster, and it also has some Yara rules, has some detection mechanisms in it to detect, for example, certain attack paths. But maybe now back to MITRE ATT&CK and Atomic Red Team. So Atomic Red Team, they also have like a GitHub page. It was developed initially by Red Canary. And here you can see, for example, the entire GitHub project, but also the atomics. So what is good to know, the atomics are mapped, as you can see here, to the techniques. So the techniques that you see, for example, let's have a look at the first one. So you have an MD page and you have a YAML file. So the YAML file typically is where the information is, but also what you need if you're running Atomic Red Team. So it's PowerShell based. It's PowerShell core based, so that means also you can run it on Linux systems. That's typically you see here, like, okay, what are the commands? So the description, you have a command which is going to, for example, dump like Alsace into a file, and then you also have a cleanup command. So there's a lot of information here, but that YAML file, well, it's like easily explainable, and you can create your own customized YAML files also with your own customized techniques. So, for example, if you are discussing some techniques with your red team and you want to create your own atomics, feel free to do so, because it's a very nice tool, actually, a very nice library to use. So that's really related to the atomics itself. If you see like this technique, you can of course search it here, and then you will also have like the MITRE ATT&CK It's a little bit slow at the moment. So OS credential dumping, so that's a technique. There are 8 sub-techniques, as we already saw. Elsa's memory. So you have a lot of information that's already provided here. So based on that, again, you can use those techniques then within your adversary emulation plan. Now, how are you going to use atomic red team? Well, typically it's a PowerShell thing. So you need to install it, you need to download it, you need to import the atomic module. And once the atomic module is imported or installed, then you have on your local disk the default path, so you can of course choose it. But the default path with all the atomics is in here. So here you have then all your atomics available offline, and you can actually just use invoke atomic. Oh, not as workflow. Invoke atomic test. Then you define your technique. You can show information, and then you can actually start testing certain things. Maybe from that perspective, let's have a look at an adversary so we can try to emulate one.
I'll put a question up there for you if you get a chance.
Okay, perfect.
On the screen.
Yes. Can we automate or bind an application like burp swish? So the question is, can we automate or bind an application like Burp Suite? Should automate or check for a set of vulnerability by sending and receiving messages by just giving a URL? Well, within Burp, but I'm not, of course, a web application expert there, but within Burp, you have all those different modules. And also when it's API based, you can actually interact with everything that's a RESTful API. So I should assume that you can automate those things. For example, here also, we are now using Atomic, but you can use your own PowerShell script to further automate it. So you can use your own tools to automate. Once you have like a REST API interface that you can interact with, then typically automation can be pretty easily done. I don't know, Neon, if that answers your question. But let me know if you have an additional question there, or you want some additional explanation related to that. So maybe let's have a look at an ATP one. What did I know?
First thing you typed in D, I think the first thing that came up was like deinstall Edge.
Really? Yeah, probably. So APT, of course, you need to. So APT 28, which was actually linked to the Hillary Clinton campaign. So let's have a look on how what that is. So yeah, indeed, it's a threat group that has been attributed to the Russian general staff, blah, blah, blah. So it uses several techniques. So you see here all those techniques being used. And we can, of course, try to execute some of those techniques on our domain controllers to see if they are working or not. Let me quickly create that emulation plan. So one of the techniques that ATP 28 is using is, for example, where is it? No, it's not that one. It's this one. So one of the techniques that it's using is OS credential dumping. Normally APT 28 should also be in here. So yeah, indeed, APT 28. So it's using credential dumping. So it has a lot of techniques here. So depending on, of course, what you want to test, you can define or chain all those techniques together. Now, I don't think we have sufficient time to chain all those techniques together. So let's first try with the PowerShell scripting one. So this is typically T105001. So command and scripting interpreter PowerShell. So let's use that PowerShell command to download Mimikatz and try to dump some credentials there. So which is 10.059.001, and we want to test the first number. Okay, it does not exist. is it? Come on.
And while Jeroen's getting this up, if you recall, I tried to do last week a video on return-oriented shellcode, and I posted it and it had no audio. I removed my video from the stream, and for some reason it did the audio too. So I'm going to get that done, hopefully, over the next few days and get that back up for you. Sorry, Jeroen.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So there was a minus atomic technique and then the test number. So I needed to add that variable. Now, as you can see, it has run Mimikatz and it actually dumped a lot of credentials. So from a manual perspective, what are you going to do now? Yeah, you're going to analyze the file. You will see that there's a lot of rubbish, but you also will see that, for example, we have a username called sec598. It has an NTLM hash, so that's already good. So probably what you want to already save is those things. You have then a username from the domain with an NTLM hash. So that probably is already a good indicator, like, okay, let's try to use, for example, that specific username with that hash. From that perspective, what maybe is also interesting, so this is one of the techniques that's being used. What is another thing that is being used? So which is this one, which is system discovery. So within your domain joint devices, you can use, come on. So done executing test, the Mimikatz one. Within your so this is like really enumerating Active Directory computers. So you see that we have, for example, one Windows, one device, so one domain device, and then we have our domain controller. So you are now using the techniques that are being used by APT28, and you are actually now doing it manually. So what is important for us? Well, we know that there's one additional system, and we know a user, and we know a hash. So from a manual perspective, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to copy paste those values, and then you're going to see, okay, what can I do else? Another technique that APT is using is patch the hash. So actually to use those hashes and to try to authenticate towards other environments. Let me have a look if we can save. So first of all, I need to, of course, have my hash. And my username I already know. Where's the hash? So here, that's the sec598. There's the hash. Let me quickly, the NTLM one. Let me quickly save it onto this one.
What format is that password in up where it's a bunch of hexadecimal separated by 1 byte? Up top there. The password with all the spaces in it. Up top.
Up top, sorry. This one?
Yep.
That's a very good question. Again, I'm
No worries, I was curious. What are you trying to do?
I'm quickly grabbing the arguments to have all the arguments set for the next technique, which is let me quickly grab that technique already. Which is this one, D5502. So use alternate authentication material, pass the hash. So there you see pass the hash. You probably also see APT28. Yeah, so has used pass the hash for lateral movement. So based on that, typically what you are trying to do there is you're going to use the hashes you got via Mimikatz, and then try to enumerate your access with pass the hash towards those other systems. So we know which hash we need to use, and we also know that there are other systems in the domain. So probably what is a good idea, because I also see we already talked a lot. So let me quickly grab my initial chain so that I can explain a little bit on how we can chain those techniques. So this one. So it is this one. Okay, perfect. So maybe just to give you an example, this is a script where we actually chained all the techniques together, which means like if you go, for example, down here, you see that there we are executing. You're executing. Oh, let's see. We are executing that credential dump. We are using the else's memory there. We are going to the list of hashes discovered. So that's a little bit debug output. Then for all those credentials, we are going to see, okay, what do we have there? And here you see like, this is the other technique, discover domain computers that we typically run there. We're going to put it into a file. And then you see the use alternate authentication. Now, the command I was looking for was actually this one. So you need for that atomic technique, as you can see here, you need input parameters. So there are some input parameters that are really defined on that, yeah, not on the APT one, but on the technique one. Oh, God. Come on. Give me the right technique here. I have a lot of screens open, which is, of course, not always ideal. If we look at that one, so the T5002 dash the hash. Let's go to the atomic library there. And it's the T55. T155, of course. So T155, let me, T155, 0 and the dot 2. If you then just open up, because probably if you're not using Atomic Red Team in a frequent order, you want to know, of course, what is in there. And here you can see, okay, those are, for example, the input parameters you need to provide. So that I actually was looking for, like, okay, which input parameters do I need to use here, for example, to actually give that attack technique or that technique the necessary input to execute successfully. So if we look at our script again, so that's what it's going to do. So it has like the credential, it has a username, and within that username, it also has like a key, which is the NTLM hash. And of course, we have those computers because we did the remote system discovery. So we enumerated those systems within Active Directory, so which is this technique. Then we also, and that's a little bit what I prepared already, or what we are also discussing a lot in the course. What we also did is we created some functions. Why? Because you saw me scrolling down all those files, and actually we only need certain values within that output. So what we are doing is we are going to put it as a result, and there you are going then to execute, like, for example, some regex expressions to say, okay, extract the username, extract the domain, extract the NTLM hash related to this is the regular expression. Verify that both user domain and NTLM is not null, because you of course want those values being populated, and then you return those credentials, and you will actually put them in a file so it can read those results. The same we are going to do for the system discovery, so the host names. So what you are just going to write down there is the host name. So you're going to again save it in a file, and then you are going to enumerate those computers within that domain. So you have a little bit. I will actually see if we can share those things with the community. I think it wouldn't be really an issue there. And then you're going to execute, all those things related to Atomic. So let's maybe have a test run to see how it is working. So this is like really the manual stuff. So I saved my file. Let me quickly see if it's the PS1. Yes. Oh, why isn't not PS1? Ah, it's backslash u. Allee. It's not. Why is it the name of the CMD? But it's just a PowerShell script. Ah, it's always nice to have live demos, and then you're like, I'm doing something stupid here with
The demo gods are always available.
it's not really the demo gods because probably this is just like a regular typo.
Yeah.
But no, it doesn't. Let me first delete that other file because.
Yeah, were you typing ATP or APT?
It's APT, so Advanced Persistent Threads.
Yeah.
So it should run normally. Why is it not running?
Because you're typing ATP?
Yeah, of course. Sorry.
So many.
Yeah, so look, this is like really like I'm really not the best coder in that perspective. So
You've been doing too much automation. You're getting late.
Yeah. Bear with me. So let's run it and let's see what it does. And now I'm really pushing enter and it's not. Come on. Okay, now it's running. So it's running those atomic tests. So again, let's maybe have a look at the script itself. So there, as you can see, it's just a concatenation of all those invoke atomics, and you are free to put another technique within it, or if you say, okay, look, this is really valuable for me, or I really want to test that other technique, you can save that output into a file, and then with that file, you can create your own functions with your own regex expressions to filter out the most valuable information there, and then in the end it should give you like this. So what we already saw is we have an NTLM hash for sec598, but apparently we also have one for Kelly Watson, so Key Watson, and that's also an NTLM hash. Then you see the list of domain computers discovered. So now we only have one output. Why? Because the system where we are executing on it, that's of course already a system we have. So we want to see, okay, how can we laterally move within the domain? So it's going to try to do it on the Windows 01 file. And here we see Windows 01 didn't respond. Well, of course, my Windows 01 is not running at the moment. So, but you see a little bit the essence of how we can chain those attacks together, and you actually have an entire attack path that you now can test. Now, even the great what's even more valuable, in my opinion, there is you can use concepts like PowerShell remoting, where you will execute those commands on another system. So with PowerShell remoting, you are able to invoke atomics on other systems and actually use that script, that APT script, on another system and run it from there to see what it's doing and how also it's being detected. For example, do we see something on that OS credential dumping in our event log? And based on that, you can actually combine how good you are in detecting certain attack techniques.
Yeah, for sure. It's great.
So related to that, you have, this is the very manual part in that sense. Like, it's automated, but you're still flexible to manually configure which techniques, and you can play around with it. So based on that, we also, like you already mentioned, we have like good adversary emulation tools, like for example Caldera. You have Sight. You have a bunch of other tools also. You have breach and attack simulation tools like Picus, which are the commercial ones. But a lot of things there are being developed, and there are a lot of great things that you can actually.
So correct me where I'm wrong, but from an offense perspective, like, one of my takeaways here is if I can get well versed in all of this, I could potentially automate a lot of my engagement and tune them to do specific things based on the target, and then just kind of sit back and relax. But I can also go in and tune things further as needed and such, right? I mean, is that
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
so
definitely. And then we didn't even open up the door about AI implementations on malware. So I don't know if you ever saw the Black Hat talk. I think it was in 2017 by IBM on Deep Locker. I don't know if you saw that one, but it's a very interesting one to see how it's a proof of concept, but how artificial intelligence can, for example, be used to decrypt certain malwares and to stay hidden like for a long time.
yeah, so someone posted up next level said Caldera agent is instantly detected by Windows Defender,
Yes.
like pretty much all of the stuff out of the box. I had Jonathan Ryder on a few weeks ago to kind of go over like how would you make custom in plans or do some tuning to get around that type of stuff. Do you have any thoughts there?
We for red team assessments we use customized packers typically for that. So really like customized things there to have an agent run on there. On the other hand, what we do is we combine like the Terraform deployment, and we say in that perspective, okay, we want to run the agent on a set of hosts within our network, and there we disable or we exclude the path of that agent. So for Windows Defender, indeed, if you are going to attack a system that is being monitored, then it will immediately be flagged. On the other hand, what is typically done from an adversary emulation perspective is really like, okay, we want to test our detection capabilities. So from that perspective, you disable or you exclude that agent and you try to run certain adversary campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but you're 100% right. If you have, for example, let's maybe do it. So adversary emulation tools, except for Atomic Red Team, but I don't know a lot of other adversary emulation tools that are not using agents. With Atomic Red Team, you have like the flexibility that you're working with PowerShell Core, which you can then embed, of course, within Windows system. It's already there, but within Linux systems, you can then add it towards a Linux or Unix-based system, and you can run those native PowerShell commands. So meaning there also it will not be immediately flagged, unless of course you're downloading malware or you have some detection capabilities, but that's also the purpose a little bit, to detect those kind of things. With adversary emulation tools, it's using agents to then actually deploy and execute certain attacks and certain techniques. So from an agent perspective, it's really pretty straightforward. So it's not rocket science. But yeah, the Sandcat one is typically the one we are using, which is the default Calderos one. So you have a Windows host, for example. You just need to see, okay, what is my server? You can also put it in a system configuration, and there you just put it in. You copy the code, and that's actually it. You see here also, it's going to be called or going to be run as a process Splunk D. So that's really like the default one. You can rename it, but again, renaming it will also trigger your EDR tooling. So my recommendation there is to probably have an exclusion or work with dedicated hosts within environments that have detection capabilities around them. But yeah, really work with those hosts so that you can try to simulate certain adversaries.
I know it's a big question, but the next level posted up. Is there an option to hide, or do you know new PowerShell bypass techniques?
At the moment, yeah, the problem is with all those new security features. So Microsoft it took a long time, but they did a pretty good job in really securing PowerShell from that perspective. So do I know a new bypass? Not really at the moment, no.
I know with like AMC, it's always like a technique, you evade it and then it catches on to that one, but there's always a way to customize it to get around AMC. You just have to know how to tune it. I mean, same thing with like the old ghostwriting techniques where you go in and mess around with the assembly so you can get around stuff, due to the fact that so many of the EDR technologies and antivirus tools, their pre-processing engines are pretty weak and based heavily on signatures. And if you can get around that, then it doesn't get passed in for full detection or analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a very good. Uh, my systems are running pretty slow at the moment. My apologies for that. So this is. So you just need to copy and paste it normally in PowerShell operation because file contains. So yeah, indeed here again you see it like Windows Defender by default already said like, look, this is a malicious or virus program, so you cannot deploy it. So what you need to do is actually go to the exclusions and there exclude, which are already done with this PC, there exclude that process and say, okay, look, I expect this process, so you can run your how we call it in in Terraform in Caldera, so you can run your abilities there. So let me. Oh, nice, cute bears. No, I need this one. It's going to be boot up.
What's the final things you want to show us here?
Well, actually, I just want to show you Caldera as such. Yeah,
Cool.
here I already tested.
I'm gonna go grab a link to an old video. It's years old. I did it as a joke to a friend of mine who was working at Sophos at the time, but it just shows you how easy it is sometimes to go in and do that ghost rating technique and then get around the endpoint detection.
Okay, perfect. So we now have our Windows 01 file here, as you can see, alive and trusted. And now within that target, so you see that's the Windows 01, you can run the core concept of Caldera is abilities. So here you have, for example, 1 minute sleep, ADFS token signing. What you also can do, you can filter on those techniques that we already saw, like credential dumping, security account manager. So all those techniques are already in there, and there's even like with Atomic, you see that those abilities. So an ability, from a naming conventions perspective, are those techniques that are there. So those abilities within Caldera you can then use on your system, and you can then create also your own adversaries. So here, for example, I think we created APT28, no, APT18, but those are abilities that are being linked and that actually can then, yeah, you can run those abilities in an operation on those target systems. So you can see, okay, how is it going to react? Let me quickly have a look at an operation. So there, for example, a demo. So, oh no, those are manual commands. I think demo chain. No. So what is it going to do? It's going to try some abilities. It's going to give you an output. For example, here it failed because it cannot find the path to the atomics folder. Here, suspicious file run from startup folder view command. You also see which command is being used. You can even put in a manual command like, okay, is it PowerShell, CMD, or Bash if it's a Linux host, and here you can have your target that you want to see there. So based on that, you can really like run entire adversary APT campaigns with all their techniques, and it really gives you some insight there. But you do have to install that agent, so that agent needs to be installed there. So it's pretty nice. You can also, of course, create your own adversaries here. You can import adversaries, so which are shared with the community. So it's a very nice tool to see and how you can actually use it within your environment. Now, of course, in a production environment, typically it's not really allowed to deploy those agents. So that's why you need to combine all those things together to really have the full benefit of security automation, especially from an offensive side. From a defensive side, they are a little bit more easier to allow those things. Maybe one thing we didn't check yet is how is it going with our Azure deployment. That's this one. So with the Terraform, here you have it. So now it's so domain controller and AD details. So please do not log in at the moment, but I will destroy it immediately. So you have everything now here. You have like, okay, what's the resource group name? Windows 10 a 1, Windows 10 2 with a username and a password so that you define. So everything is now in there. And if we now look at our Azure portal, it should also be in there.
The first one to log into that box gets a prize, right?
It's a good one. Why isn't it showing? It's pretty crazy. There should be like a new resource there. I think something is wrong with my session here. Let me quickly. Is it that one? No, that's not the right one. Virtual machines. I should have those. So yeah, here you see it. So it's actually no, it's strange. It's not showing up. So that's a little bit with cloud environments. Sometimes it's trial and error there. So you have like that resource group where all my resources now are in. You have your domain controller, network security group. So everything is now set up for testing there. You have your usernames. You have that public IP where you can
and that was based on all the Terraform that Purple Cloud created, right?
Indeed, that's all based on that.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's an awesome project.
Yeah, definitely. And because it will also cost a certain amount of money, you want to destroy it as soon as you're done. And that's just the benefit of using Terraform. I'm not going to click on everything on delete and apply and delete and confirm and apply. Let Terraform do the job for you. So and with Terraform destroy. So people that are now working on the box, they will soon be kicked out. So
yeah. So cool. Well, great. I really appreciate it. That's a lot of great information. And again, I know you're just scratching the surface of all of this technology. And it's again something that if you want to get good at it, you really have to go in, dive in, and get into the weeds and mess around with it. But I've got a lot of homework ahead of me for sure. But we're about to wrap up here. So if anyone has a question, please get it in now while we're closing out with our thoughts here. But so I guess we're going to have the beta. You're going to have the beta run of your course coming up probably in a couple of months. What would you, for anyone who was going to attend that, what would you tell them to do kind of to ramp up and prepare for it to get the best out of it?
Yeah, well, I think they're definitely a good intro already in PowerShell and Python because those are most frequently used to automate certain things. Python and PowerShell and cloud environments, that's definitely a requirement in that specific sense. Like, okay, you need to know how things work. You don't need to know the inner details. But from that perspective, we have a lot to cover, a lot of engineering, a lot of labs, large labs also, with AWS, with Azure, with Ansible on-prem within your own environment. So there are a lot of things to cover. So what is really necessary from that perspective is you have a basic understanding of cybersecurity, how attackers typically work, and how you can have some defensive implementations or some security controls in place. So the general knowledge there is a necessity. And then, of course, a little bit like the introduction courses for cloud are an excellent intro. The security essential is also an excellent intro. So you have a basic understanding of, okay, what are those vulnerabilities? What are techniques? How can you use certain techniques there?
So I guess the last question I have is like for if I wanted to get started and let's say I don't have the money to go and get training or anything else like that, but I want to get started in this. And obviously Purple Cloud is a great resource, but like what would be the first steps you would recommend? Like, should I go grab a book on Terraform or like what should my first steps be?
Well, actually, there are a lot of resources available. Now, a book on Terraform, I tried to read it once. Now, it was not, how do you say it? Yeah, it's really like the technical layout on how it works. And there are a lot of definitions. What I would recommend is just play around with it, install it. It's open source, it's free. Install it, play around with it, and use those examples as Purple Cloud. You search for templates. You have a lot of templates available there, and try to adapt it towards your own needs. And you definitely can go a lot further than what I showed you. The only thing we didn't show at the moment, which is also an interesting one, and I really wanted to address it, is the defensive perspective related to automation. There also we are using, for example, SOAR tooling.
So
Also
yeah.
from an offensive perspective, and we didn't have time to cover it yet. Maybe in another episode, let's see. But I think that also from a sword tooling perspective, a lot of great open source projects are there on the market, and are there open and freely to use. And a lot of things can be automated there, and it's really great to see that we are getting towards the next level related to security automation.
Sweet. Great. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend. And hope to have you on here again. And good luck with the course. And for everyone who joined here, have a great weekend. And any last words, Jeroen?
No, I want to thank you very much for this invitation, and I want to thank everybody that is attending or watching the stream. Like, yeah, it's really helpful also from my end to cover those other topics like mobile security, the last one, and exploit development. And they were very great talks there. The one thing I maybe want to add is I'm working together with my colleague Didier Stevens. I don't know if yeah, it's a well-known name in the cybersecurity industry. But I'm working together with Didier Stevens to look how we can actually use automation and AI within malware to make it more stealthy even. So the deep locker principle from IBM, we're going to see how we can, for example, use data sets within malware to create an ideal scenario to attack a certain organization, to profile it and to attack it. So we are working on some things there. So hopefully we can release some more information soon.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks for the great stream, and we will see you all next week.
Okay, super. I will be also on the other end. So thank you very much, Steven. See you.
Nice. Thanks. Bye bye.